Did you know something new is invented every 10 minutes? Join us as we speak to the innovators reinventing our world here on planet Earth and far, far beyond. Welcome to GTWN Now, a podcast brought to you by the Global Telecom Women's Network and sponsored by CMS Global. GTWN Now introduces the movers and the makers at the cutting edge of technology who are committed to keeping us all connected. In each episode, we invite a leading expert to share her experience building life-changing inventions in places and spaces that don't yet exist, and the inspiration they must muster to tackle the impossible. We also ask our guests to share tips, tools, and strategies to reach your own moonshot. I'm your host, Rosali Gitau, founder of Bixi FinTech for Women and Global Telecom Women's Network International Board member. Welcome to GTWN Now. Today's episode will be hosted by Candace Johnson, founder of the Global Telecom Women's Network. Candace was born into a family where her father worked on the first satellites for the U.S. government. He spearheaded the world's first private satellite system and was lent by the U.S. Air Force to the White House to work on the Apollo mission. Candace has always felt that space was not only her destiny, but that of humanity, and that it should be accessible to all. Decorated by the Luxembourg and German governments respectively as commander and officer of their respective orders of merit, Candace is also the recipient of a Lifetime Achievement Award from the World Communications Awards, the Global Telecom Women's Networks, the International Alliance for Women, just to name a few. Candace also graduated from such prestigious universities as Stanford, the Sorbonne, and Vassar, and has always been guided by a strong sense of personal responsibility.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our second podcast in the GTWN Now series on digital humanism. We're so happy to have with us today Janice Hughes. Janice has been providing thought leadership to the world for decades, be it as founder and CEO of such initiatives as the first green fiber network in the world, be it leading a consulting company, Spectrum, be it as president of Médecins du Monde for the UK, protecting wildlife with Space for Giants, be it as a patron of the arts. Janice personifies the word Renaissance. Particularly as it relates to our series, GTWN Now, Janice co-founded the GTWN 33 years ago. And she was the one who coined our slogan, the changing culture of communications from generation to generation. Today, Janice will share with us her thoughts on the tree of life and how it relates to our series, Digital Humanism. Janice, you've chosen this topic, the tree of life. How do we ensure that the tree of life endures under this new era of AI and robotics?
Thank you for that lovely introduction. I think our lives at the moment are being repackaged and broken down into bite-sized attributes that we can't always understand or describe in a clear manner to ourselves or even to others. There's our human essence, I think, which is being drawn out of us and reshaped into a digital product that's quite hard for us to put our arms around and fully understand. At the same time, there is a tsunami of data gushing from each of us into the coffers of the Googles, Metas, or Disney, data volumes that we can hardly imagine. And how will that affect us?
So, it's kind of fun that you talk about, bringing your arms around this, and we might say tree hugging. And I do remember when we were discussing this topic with our GTWN international board members, and you came up with this idea about our DNA and the tree of life. And, why do you bring this image of the tree of life, into a discussion about AI and robotics?
Well, I think the image of the tree enables us to picture just how fast we're developing as a species. It reminds us of where we've come from in sense of going back to our roots. Let's just think for a moment about the Narukatome boy. He was a 12-year-old hominid who was living 1.5 million years ago on Lake Turkana in Kenya. And I think if we can just take ourselves back to that time, we can now use AI to help us understand how he lived. And we might even find his sister, Turkana girl, using AI and digital surveillance. So I think we are now in an era where we can know so much more about our past and our DNA. We can even understand how women carry the key mitochondrial data that enables our energy machine to operate throughout our lives. So I think from the tree of life and that evolution, we can also think about how slowly initially we evolved, but we all know that we are now in a very rapid evolution at this time. And we can also, as I mentioned before, look back on history and find trillions of bits of data and information and pour it all into this huge vat of generative IT. We can pour it into this huge vat of generative AI, and then we can wait and see and ponder and think about what will pop out of this generative AI machine. But I'm not sure we can totally predict how the algorithms of today and the future will create the new stories and the new images that we will be using in our everyday lives at home and in the workplace. I mean, I think the root of the trees, the branches are also helpful to us in picturing the rapid advances that are being made in digital analysis and in replicating human tasks. These innovations are really developing faster than in any other sector. And we have to ask ourselves, are we overdeveloping one side of our lives, over investing possibly in one area in particular? Might the tree fall over? Will it become lopsided? Or can the other sectors keep up with this fast pace of evolution in AI and data development?
So, in my introduction, I talked about you being a Renaissance woman. And of course, not all of us can be Renaissance people like yourself, doing, having your specialty in Africa, in telecoms, in, helping the doctors of the world and the people of the world, being a patron of the arts and always doing this thought leadership. So, how do we trust this new glistening tree, of digital humanism? Is it the same tree?
For me, it is the tree. It's a replication of the millions and millions of trees that exist on our planet, and they endure. And I think it's really important that we build around the AI revolution to ensure that what we do also endures. I think we all know people who can repair a clock or rewire our router. But somehow the fixers are just getting further and further away from our everyday lives. As we pour more and more data into the digital vat, how can we be sure that we really know what's going on? Generative AI can now rewrite and conjure up many different stories and videos. We now live almost in a 50-50 age of truths and falsehoods. And it's really important that we don't allow the falsehoods to overtake the truths, because we must ensure that people are able to trust what is going on in AI and not see it as threatening. So you could say that we are entering this very exciting and stimulating era, and it's like a roller coaster ride, but we need it to be grounded, serious, and people to trust it. It's so important.
And I think, that we as GTWN and all of our colleagues, it really is up to us and to every single one of us to make certain that we get the most out of AI, as you are suggesting. And, what role will education and awareness play in creating a new moment of enlightenment, since we're talking about the Renaissance?
Well, one thing's certain is the rate of change is definitely going to be exponential. While we can travel back in time and take lessons from our past and our history, we'll also be propelled forward incredibly rapidly. And I think that AI and robotics itself is going to morph and mutate in ways that we can't imagine today. And it's going to be something truly remarkable. And we hope it's going to be on the positive side. So I think that education and educating the young ones in particular into how to frame and trust the internet age is going to be incredibly important. So while some preschool children will still be playing with their toy dinosaurs, we have to think about how we enable them to understand all of the images and videos and stories and how they fit into this future world. And it's very important that they learn how the software tools themselves can manipulate everything and anything. And so it's very important they have this critical way of looking at what is around them and not just accepting it all. So we have a huge task to do, because I think it's very easy to push things under the rug and say, oh, well, we'll wait till they're a bit older. But I think one thing we know about the new AI emboldened era is that it is available to young people at an earlier and earlier stage of their lives.
And so as a result, we need to make certain that, just as we teach, quote unquote, reading and writing, that we are also teaching digital skills.
Yes.
Yes, I think, now, one area which I believe that everybody actually feels pretty comfortable about with AI is the medical world. And this is obviously something that you, as the UK president of Médecins du Monde, have had so much experience in, particularly in developing countries, where you were very, very active. So, how do you think that AI is going to impact the medical world?
Well, I think the AI impact on medicine is going to be absolutely massive, because people really want to be healthy and want to live longer. And when I was working on Ebola in Africa, it was the fantastic logistics planning that enabled us in Liberia and Sierra Leone to actually get to grips with what was needed, and coordinating with the army in building field hospitals away from the urban populations very, very quickly. So I think there's no doubt that with our skills of genetic engineering, microbial analysis, that we will be able to make much better life-saving decisions using medical diagnostics. So it's actually the whole framework of medicine and logistics that will enable us to take many, many benefits from this area. And there's, of course, even money going into cryonics, where people are planning to freeze their bodies for some hoped for future revival. But let's see. I think there are other priorities for the moment.
Well, it is very interesting, certainly with the pandemic and the creation of the vaccines, AI played a huge role in accelerating the development of those vaccines. But as you say, it wasn't just the actual scientific medical research, it was everything around it, the logistics. And in particular, and I think this is interesting, the fact that governments were willing to forego many times um, the just a second, I'll think of it. All of the red tape,
Yeah.
that so many of these vaccines had to go through. And
Mm,
it is a wonderful example of working together
mm,
and helping the AI be able to do its magic, and so it's kind of I think it's a lesson, from for us to learn from. And so then I'm kind of wondering, okay, well, with all these AI analytical models, how did the polls, get the US election forecasts so wrong?
Well, it's a really good question, because I think the media themselves believe that they know all there is to know about generative AI. They're analyzing it and reporting on it all the time. And yet, you're right, the pollsters got it so wrong, in spite of spending a fortune on their forecasting models. And some of the key individuals in the industry even had to resign due to these failures to forecast what was really going on. And I think what we see from this is that it's still difficult for mathematical AI to predict human behavior. And it's also worth remembering that to get the algorithms right, even for getting bipedal robots to remain balanced and walk in a straight line, is incredibly difficult. So there's still a long way to go. And we just need to be cognizant of this when we're planning, and allowing for some diversions and some inaccuracies in some of the planning that we do because of the human factors.
So, Janice, two areas where the world is really going through massive disruption are agriculture and manufacturing. And, we are seeing now in Brazil, where we're having the G20, that agriculture is playing a very, very important, shall we say, role in the discussions, because we have the food bearing countries and we have countries who do not cannot bear any food or cannot produce any food, and yet we have the food production countries saying that they don't want to have import vegetables from Brazil, etc. At the same time, we're going through here in Europe with all of the automotive manufacturers.
Yeah.
We are going through a tremendous loss of jobs, factories that are just being laid still, etc. So how can we profit and still not destroy our green, urbanized world? How can we make our urbanized world be still green? And you, of course, are doing this amazing project, with the first green fiber network in the world. But, so how can we really, make this benefit humanity?
Mm. Well, I think if we take a look, again, going back to the roots of our tree, we can look at how subsistence agriculture and nomadic pastoralism have managed to run on for thousands of years in sync with their own environment, in a way, optimizing the conditions that exist. And I think in agriculture, intensive and industrial agriculture around the world, we've got to engage in a balance. So we have to work with the intensification to improve products, improve species, whether they're vegetables or the domesticated animals that are used in agriculture or developed in agriculture. We've got to optimize that, but at the same time, we've got to find a balance that works. And AI will be able to help us in preserving rare species or species with better characteristics and propagate those. And it isn't, on the other hand, in the wildlands of the world that remain, hopefully, we can use AI to help critically endangered species from extinction, to save them from extinction. I think in the industrial area, manufacturing, there are huge challenges. And indeed, if you take a look at the view of the east coast of Canada, there's the most beautiful architectural, glistening white cube, which is in fact a blueberry factory, and it is totally manned by robots. So on the one hand, it's saving energy because there's no need for any windows, there's no need for special heating, just a constant cool air for the packaging of the blueberries and air freighting them to Japan. So I think, yes, AI can help transform agriculture and manufacturing, but we still have to worry about, on the one hand, the job creation in other new up and coming areas and reskilling, but also the preserving of the environment around our intensive agriculture.
And so, concretely, where and how do you think that the planet and the environment can benefit and benefit today, because the clock is ticking, from these new AI developments?
Well, I think if you're living in or around San Francisco, you know that we will inhabit autonomous vehicles and robotaxis, and our homes will be fired up with wind turbines, heat exchangers, and solar panels. We know that, and we have to incentivize that because people may be too slow for the planet to engage upon these new types of energy generation. So we have to really work hard and focus on this. But I think we will be able to get back to a cooling moment for the planet thanks to AI. It can't happen fast enough. I think the trees bear witness to this in the fact that we need a transformation to have an impact in the short, the near term, in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And the key will be to incentivize much more investment going into the energy saving options, and then backed up by all the AI software logistics that help repair, restore, and monitor these energy devices that we hope will all be deploying.
And thank you, Janice. It sounds great, but is there enough funding? And is there a regulation to allow us to see and to experiment and to experience this new sci-fi world that you're talking about?
Well, I think there isn't enough investment, and I think the governments have a really important role to play in enabling the AI and robotics technologies to work in an effective way. And I think this can be done in the future. And already, in terms of the regulation side of it, we see some strides being taken to control the extremes of pornography and criminalization on the web in some countries. Australia, of course, has already stepped forward in a dramatic way with a landmark prohibition of children being banned from using social media, children of the under 16s, that is. So here in the EU and the UK, I would suggest that there have been a few legal changes, but we're a long, long way behind, and we're almost just tinkering with some of the regulation that needs to be undertaken to make sure we get the best out of this AI revolution. I think we're still in that moment where many people will sort of lean in and lean on their automated data systems, but without really knowing what's going on. And I think a lot of people don't know how cookies or how liking something or how sharing content can be screened, scraped, and sorted into entirely new sounds and images. I think there does need to be a lot more understanding. But just coming back to the investment side, I think governments do need to step up, create strong laws, and also create incentives for us to make those investments in the right direction. Otherwise, the lopsided trees that I spoke of will indeed, or our tree of life, will fall over.
Well, Janice, you and I have been friends for so long. And when I think that certainly I was very much on the, deregulation side for so many
Yes.
years, and also, fostering private investment, and yet you, in your life, in your professional life, you have always, you have helped governments see the light and guide them. And I think, quite frankly, I think that is a rare gift. Um, so, in your kind of glass ball or crystal ball, um, what do you see as the next steps and the next developments that we should be taking or that will happen, or that we need to be aware of, dangers, etc.?
Well, I think
So that our tree will grow. So that our tree will
indeed,
grow.
indeed, yeah. No, I think, I mean, I'm someone, as you know, who really believes that we have to accept where we are. Artificial intelligence has entered our lives, and with all these remixes, we can't put it back in the box. We really have to look forward and live with what we've created now. And we have to make the most out of it. And I think it is important for everyone to imagine how they can help. So, in addition to their mainstream working lives, I think it's very important that we step back or step aside and also think of the bigger picture, and think about how we can help others, be it the governments themselves who are perhaps struggling with the resources to regulate. How do we learn from others? How do we showcase something and then pass it on to other countries? I think that's very important. And how people in the creative sector also take a responsibility for, if you like, the all singing, the all dancing robots. But in all seriousness, how do we also portray these issues of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how do we get the most out of it? I mean, it's mine and it's yours. We've got to take responsibility for it, and we have to raise that awareness and engage in conversations and share the best things. And I think, again, it's being getting over the complexity by being optimistic and going for the best, and being sure and knowing that we can't lose our autonomy and control over this. So there are many things we can do. So I'm suggesting broadening our narrow work lives and taking an understanding across all sectors and ensuring that we get that kind of balance that we need going forward. Thank you.
Oh, Janice, thank you. True words of wisdom from someone who has, throughout really all of her professional life, seen so much and had an impact on, our world. And these are words of wisdom and of guidance that will help us and our listeners and viewers hopefully be energized and inspired to go forward, to remember our tree of life, and to capture all that is good out of this digital humanism experience that we are having. Thank you so much.
I want to thank our guest for joining today's episode of GTWN Now, and give a big thank you to our sponsors, CMS Global, for making this episode possible. Today's podcast will be available on our website, gtwn.org, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified when new episodes drop. I'm your host, Rasali Gitau, GTWN International Board Member, wishing you a week of wonder.